Hello everyone, I am Prashant Bastra, founder Guruchi Ayurveda. I am back once again to talk about fourth myth of Ayurveda. It is generally believed that Ayurveda medicines do contain heavy metals. Right? So I also went back, like all of you. I wanted to understand where is this wrong information coming to people. So when I went back to Google and searched that Ayurveda medicines do contain heavy metals, so the search report gave me, there are basically 4 to 5 articles, and all those articles are actually coming from US. If you look at the website, so all of them are from US. And all these 4 to 5 articles were actually referring back to only one article that was from JAMA, basically Journal of American Medical Association. That's where the original report came from. All these reports were actually referring back to the same report. Now, I dig deeper to understand what context they were talking that Ayurvedic medicines do contain heavy metals. They basically took 2 examples. In one of the examples, they said there is a man who was taking Ayurvedic medicines for a very long time for increasing the vigor. Now, to increasing the vigor and vitality, typically there are a lot of medicines in market. Like typically, if you look at there, and they are all gold based. Like Shilajit Gold is one such example, right? So these medicines do claim that they have metals in them, and any metal-based medicines are not recommended to be consumed beyond certain limits, and they should be strictly consumed under doctor's supervision. Now, if somebody consumes it for a very long time, obviously they will have adverse impacts. It is given, it is known, and they also looked at second example, which said some US resident. Indian American. So basically, when he went to India, he bought some Ayurvedic product from one temple in India, and that medicine does not even have a label. And he was consuming that for quite some time, and they found that that medicine contained heavy metals. Basically, this is not even legalized. Nobody would have even. This is not approved from Ayush or anybody. So it is a completely unrecognized sort of a medicine. And if people claim wrong things because of that, it is not only because of Ayurveda. It just you went to some unrecognized practice. Now, the third thing, they also looked at some of the product samples that were available in the market, particularly in the US. Now, they looked at some of the samples like Mahalakshmi Vilas Ras, Navaratna Ras, or even Siddha Makarada Jyoti. All these tablets in Ayurveda, they clearly mention on the label that these medicines do have a heavy metals in them. It is clearly written. You don't even have to do a study or a research to tell them that these medicines have a heavy metal. Now, so where are they getting it wrong? Now, the thing is, Americans do not understand Ayurveda simply because it is not their science. In Ayurveda, as I mentioned in a lot of my previous episodes, there is a branch or a special branch called Rasa Shastra. Ayurvedic doctors, after completion of their BMS graduation, they go for a 3-year post-graduation program in Rasa Shastra. This particular Rasa Shastra department only talks about usage of metals in Ayurveda. Now, any learned Ayurvedic practitioner who has not studied Rasa Shastra, I have spoken to a lot of doctors, they will be skeptical even to prescribe these medicines, even though they would have learned some of these things as part of their undergraduation program, but they would be reluctant to prescribe these medicines because they are not too sure. So only a learned Rasa Shastra MD postgraduate doctors will only be able to confidently prescribe these medicines. Now, Ayurveda actually believes that these metals are required for the body for maintaining a equilibrium in your metabolic system. Now, if metabolism has to be right, some of the metals are required in the body. For example, gold, silver, mercury, zinc, lead, some of these things are required in right proportion. If they are less or if they are more, both of these things will cause a metabolic disorder. Now, one of the common problems that I see in today's date is of the thyroid. Now, thyroid comes because of the deficiency of copper. Now, if you see, back in the days, we used to drink water from the copper pots. Now, copper vessels are not there. So, because of which we see an increasing rate of thyroid. Now, so if you see, this is a beautiful science, and Ayurveda recognizes the importance of these metals. So that is a very simple reason why we wore gold chain. That's a simple reason why we wore silver chains. Silver is a metal we used in different parts of the body. Now again, there are people who misuse it. For example, gold was always supposed to be used on upper part of the body, and below the waist we should always use the silver. Now, one of the things that I see which people are doing wrong now is, people use gold anklets. It's a status symbol that they can afford, but is it recommended for the body? Not really, right? So there are a lot of these wrong things that happen, but nonetheless, there is an importance. Our body needs metal, like copper. Now, because of copper deficiency, we are seeing a lot of increase in the thyroid cases. So, like that, there are other metals which are required. Now, what I would recommend everybody is, any Ayurvedic medicines that do contain the metal contained in them, please do not self-medicate and take it strictly under the advice of a doctor. We have seen some of the patients, basically what they do is, doctor would have prescribed a specific medicine for 10 days. They would have got result, but they would go on using it for years together. And one fine day, something happens and then say, oh, because of Ayurvedic drug, this thing has happened. It is not because of Ayurvedic drug, it is because of your ignorance. These metals, as I mentioned, can never be overfed to the body nor underfed to the body. So that is why always take it under the prescription of the doctor. Now, there is a good news for the Americans. What Ayush Board has done of late is basically, if you export any of the medicines to other countries, there is something called as free sale certificate, which is mandatory for all the exports. But they would not issue a free sale certificate if there is any heavy metal in the medicines, simply because now to avoid all these structures from different countries, and also to basically regulate the standards. So Ayush has made it mandatory that even to grant the license for some of the products, they look at the heavy metal test report. Only then they would grant the product license. So, and another, now that all these things, this journal of JAMA and everything was written way back in 2004. Now, recently on the last month, they gave a patent to one of the Indian researchers who is there in US for a nano Ayurvedic medicine. That is not a new concept in India, just nano Ayurvedic medicine. If you look at all of these medicines, a complete Rasha Shastra preparation itself can be labeled as nano Ayurvedic medicines. So, but the good part is they recognize that these metal based medicines are good for the body and they have granted a patent for it. So that's how the scenario has changed. So they did not understand what was Rasha Shastra back then. Now they do recognize that what is Rasha Shastra as per Ayurveda and the importance of that in treatment of some of the diseases like cancer and everything. So that's another good news. So this is a myth that was carried from a very long time. Now, I will leave you with two thoughts before I finish this video. In the market, there are different pills on the modern medicines. Let's say there is a Seconal, which basically used for treatment of anxiety, right? But if you take it for a very long time, you get addicted to it. Now there is codeine, which all the college students are very, very familiar with. And now there are a lot of amphetamines. Basically, that's used in the treatment of ADHD. But if people use it in excess quantity, that becomes basically that gets you very high. So now I can look at, there are hundreds of such medicines. I can look at all of these medicines and call them as medicine, or I can misuse them and call them as these are drugs and not really medicines. Now that's the same thing that has happened in Ayurveda. If somebody misuses it and then you call it as the medicines have a heavy metal which are dangerous for the body, or you use it in the right way as prescribed by the doctor and take the required benefit that the medicine has to offer. All the metal based Ayurvedic preparations are used in all sorts of emergencies, and if you are suffering from some of the diseases for a very long time, these medicines will give you instant results. They are highly potent medicines. That is why the concept of Rasha Shastra exists in Ayurveda. Now, the last thought that I want to leave with all of you, it's time for us to worry about the heavy metals not in the medicines of Ayurveda, but it's time for us to worry about the heavy metals present in the food chain. there is a very high content of arsenic nowadays found in rice, for example, and that is happening because of excessive usage of fertilizers. Forget the medicines. On a day-to-day basis, you imagine how much of rice you are consuming. That basically means how much of arsenic that is getting into your body. I hope I have given enough information for you to go back and rethink about your wrong perception that Ayurveda actually contains heavy metals. It is a science in Ayurveda, and it is such a beautiful science, and the science existed for a very long time. If there was something wrong, then the government of India wouldn't have made a 3-year specialized post-graduation program as part of that. So please knock off this myth from your mind that Ayurvedic medicines do contain heavy metals. No, it is a science, well-defined science. Thank you and have a good day.